All right. Welcome, everybody, to the operator community call. Really stoked about this one. Today we got Joe here from Aztec, as well as Steve and Oshin. Of course, you all know him, our co-founder and the inventor of distributed validators. Yeah, really excited. Been following Aztec for a really long time, back in like the ZK Money days, and yeah, stoked to have you guys here. Before we jump into it, for people who don't know you, if maybe Joe and Steve, you could introduce yourselves and yeah, let people know what you do at Aztec, as well as maybe like what you guys are excited about over the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, awesome. I can go first. Thanks for having us. And yeah, thanks for all the awesome work you guys are doing securing Ethereum. It's been amazing to see kind of, I guess, the industry change over the last kind of like three plus years. And yeah, you guys have been a big part of that. Yeah, I'm one of the co-founders here at Aztec. Been working on it for seven and a half years now. I focus on kind of a lot of our decentralization efforts and all things kind of like product related. So yeah, I'm just excited about, bringing this network into the wild. Kind of bootstrapping a new kind of like validator community is always fun. And then just seeing the awesome new things people can build with programmable privacy. It's kind of a whole new design space. And yeah, the next kind of, 6 months are going to hopefully open up that box, and we're going to see some more apps that drive real world adoption is my hope.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? More people on chain.
Let's do it.
Nice. I'm Steve, leading BD at Aztec. So I'm trying to find all of these high quality node operators, essentially, reaching out to people all over the world. Some weird and wonderful people out there, but we need all of you. So yeah, super excited to be on the call again. I think last time I saw Oshin, we were enjoying a drink in Dubai, so good to catch up again. And yeah, excited to talk about widening the design space for Ethereum.
Nice, cool. Well, if you're looking for high quality node operators, I think you're in the right spot. I think we have over almost 700 operators on mainnet right now running DVs. So cool. Yeah, happy to get a lot of those guys running Aztec when you guys go to mainnet or even on testnet. Oshin, maybe some people don't know who you are. You can go ahead and do a quick intro.
Yeah, happy to. Nice to meet all of the chat. My name's Oshin. I'm CTO and co-founder at DV Labs and have been building the Opal Collective for about 4 years. I've been validating on mainnet since Genesis and have been in the Ethereum space since about 2018. Yeah, pretty involved in the whole staking node operating side of things.
Genesis validator, sweet. What's your index number?
Not out, but I will say it's 4 digits.
Nice.
There's lots of those low. There's lots of those low 3-4 digit, maybe even 1 or 2 digit numbers available at Aztec. So
nice.
Oh, yeah, the 1 and 2s went very fast. I wasn't near that brave.
Nice. Cool. Well, maybe we can get into it. Yeah, I'd like to give you guys a chance, Joe and Steve, to kind of talk about like how Aztec got here. I remember using like ZK Money and Aztec Connect back in maybe it was 2021 and then 2022. So yeah, happy to hear, what happened with those projects, maybe how you ended up at the more generalized layer 2 solution you guys are working with today.
Yeah, I can kick things off. So maybe I'll go back to the beginning. So we kind of set out actually not as a privacy company. We were just trying to get some of that real world adoption and bring people on chain by putting various forms of kind of corporate finance on chain and kind of enabling more people to buy it. We kind of realized pretty quickly that all of these loans and instruments we were trying to put on chain, like they needed strong privacy guarantees, and all of the institutions that were creating them just weren't going to touch Ethereum as it stood. And so we started, or Zach started, my co-founder and our CEO started kind of looking into ways to get privacy on Ethereum back in 2018, 2019. And we've actually had kind of 3 iterations of Aztec. The first one, kind of Aztec 1, was, we don't talk about it very much, but it was kind of very clunky and slow, but it gave you a basic form of confidentiality. This was back when kind of gas prices were, one Gwei and ETH was like $100, $200. And so like you could do a lot of stuff in a smart contract, and proofs costing 2 million gas inside your transaction was fine. The world changed a bit in kind of 2020, 2021, and we had to go back to the drawing board. And so that's when Plonk was invented, which is this new kind of ZK proving system, and we kind of used that to underpin the next kind of iterations of kind of the privacy protocol that we started building as a pivot. And that's kind of where Aztec kind of Connect came about and ZK Money, and those were kind of just proof of concepts of trying to take this new cryptography and this new proving system into a production setting. They were still kind of roll-ups, but they were very centralized. Like we were kind of like the sole operator, and we learned a ton from building those about what it would take to actually build a fully programmable private network. Our goal was always been to try and get to this end state of kind of private smart contracts that can call other private smart contracts and have kind of true composability. It's just taken a long time for the cryptography and the proving systems to get to a point where they're performant enough. And so, we ended up shutting down ZK Money and Aztec Connect in 2022. It was taking a lot of effort to run it. Running a centralized sequencer for lots of users is actually quite painful. And so we learned a lot of hard lessons about decentralization that way. And I guess my firm belief after going through that is that you have to design something to be decentralized from day one. And so the next version of Aztec that we've been building now for the last 2 years-ish is fully decentralized from day one, and that's kind of what we're really excited about now. We think it kind of it's the final piece. It enables fully private smart contracts, but you can also have public state if you want to. You can kind of have the best of both worlds, where you can build these applications that have privacy as a first-class primitive, and we're launching that as a decentralized stage 2 roll-up. And so we're on the testnet stage right now, but that's kind of a quick fast forward into where we've got to over the last 7 years or so.
Nice. So did maybe like some recent advances in like ZK proving kind of guide your guys' decision to like make the jump now as compared to like with ZK Money and Aztec Connect?
Yeah, it's a good question actually. So with kind of ZK Money and Aztec Connect, we were able to make, let me actually zoom out for a second. So to get any strong form of like user privacy, you have to make proofs on a user's device, like a phone, kind of in the browser. And so we were able to do that in kind of 2021, 2022 with ZK Money and Aztec Connect, but the proofs we could make were pretty limited in size. And what this meant was that the roll-up could only run code or circuits that were kind of operating on shared state. Like you couldn't have state that was siloed to a smart contract because you could only just operate like this tiny little program. And so all of the state was kind of shared, and it meant that like technically you could have got programmability, but there would have had to have been a central actor that kind of audited all the contracts and kind of whitelisted who could deploy. The big jump came in kind of 2023-ish, where recursion, which is this trick to kind of verify a program in a program, became performant enough to do kind of in a second or two in like a browser. And what that means is you can verify the rules of a program. Like you can verify like one proof basically meets the rules of a program like Aztec or protocol like Aztec, and you can do that client side. And so that's been the big innovation, is enabling us to get to a point where anyone can write a smart contract, and you can verify that someone interacting with that smart contract has not interacted with a different smart contract state. You can verify the rules of the blockchain have been performed correctly, all kind of client side on that device. And so there was a big switch, I guess, in 2023-ish that Zach kind of published some papers, and with Ariel as well, we kind of realized that this was actually going to be feasible. Still a little bit slow, but it's feasible and getting faster kind of every day. And that was the big unlock for us, really.
Nice.
Yeah, just to add on that, so like the key innovation comes from the ability to generate these proofs in browser. So like on consumer hardware, and there's teams even working to enable that on mobile now as well, which is pretty exciting. So like that's what we hope will obviously lead to mainstream adoption, when anyone can generate a proof on any type of consumer hardware.
Yeah, that I see a lot of movement in the space for sure. Yeah, you mentioned that you'll be launching as a decentralized stage 2 rollup. Yeah, as far as I know, you're the only rollup to launch in a decentralized fashion like that. Yeah, why is that so important to you? And
yeah, I think it's
start there.
two reasons really. Like one is kind of privacy comes in and out of favor over the years, different governments and kind of we only have to look back to kind of like the SSL era of like people kind of trying to ban like web encryption. That like it's a touchy subject, and like eventually kind of governments realize that it's needed, but it's always this like this struggle and this battle. And I think that because it's so polarizing, kind of the need for privacy versus kind of like other forms of technology, having one single entity control it is just a non-starter. And so it's kind of, we view it as this kind of almost public good technology that you can build things on top of, but the actual kind of core technology, it has to be open source. It has to be kind of like something that no one entity controls. And I guess launching a decentralized network is just an extension of that. Like if the code's open source, then it wouldn't make sense to have like gated validators or gated actors kind of actually running the code. And so we've just taken that thinking through all of our design decisions. And we hope we've kind of hopefully been able to build a fully decentralized network as a result. I think the other reason is just the incentive alignment. Like if you start centralized, like there's not a strong incentive to decentralize. Like, a lot of these centralized L2s print a lot of money with their centralized sequencer, and it's hard for them to kind of give that up. And you also make a lot of design decisions. Like we did the same with Aztec Connect, where you actually have to start again to decentralize, because some things that work in a centralized setting just don't work in a decentralized setting. And so we've had to solve a lot of problems along the way to kind of actually get to a point where you can launch a decentralized rollup. Like simple things like if I'm not the next sequencer, like making sure that all the data is available that you need. If Steve's the next sequencer after me, making sure he's got all the data he needs to actually produce a block. It's a non-trivial problem. And so a lot of kind of rollups just hand wave that today because they're the next sequencer. So it's kind of trust me, bro, kind of vibes, which is not ideal. So that's kind of, I guess, the two reasons. And yeah, for us launching decentralized, it's kind of three things. There's three components to it. There's the validator set, there's proving, because we're a ZK rollup, and then there's governance. And so you kind of have to tackle all of those to actually hold up that claim. And so, yeah, we're aiming to do all three. The validators is kind of one that everyone in the school can hopefully help with, as well as governance. But there's also an actor in the network who constructs proofs, which will be permissionless as well.
Nice. Yeah, it's definitely not the easy road. The easy road seems to be, launching in a centralized fashion, but yeah, definitely a lot of value in decentralization as Ethereum has proven. So yeah, you mentioned a couple roles, validators, which I think maybe sequencer and validator are roughly the same. And then also provers.
Yeah, so there's kind of validators perform two roles in the network, and so it's a proof of stake network for the validators, and we have this kind of notion of a committee, a bit like Ethereum, and the committee is 48 people. When you're selected to be on the committee, you perform one of two roles. One is block production, so you could be the proposer for any kind of slot in an epoch. And when you're not the proposer, you have to attest to the fact that someone else's block is provable. And that's a quirk of Aztec. Because our transactions are zero knowledge proofs, they're quite large. And so you end up kind of verifying that proof, which is very easy to do, and just asserting to the fact that you've seen the proof and the transaction is available. If a kind of majority of the committee, super majority is like 33 out of 48, attest, then the block can be kind of produced. It goes on L1 as a kind of execution pre-confirmation, and then later on it's proven. And so we kind of use the validator role to decentralize bot production, but also attest to the fact that the problem I talked about earlier, like if I'm publishing data as part of my block proposal, the next sequencer must have it to produce the next block. We use the committee to kind of give some sort of like soft, small security around the block production process.
Nice. And then as far as that validator role, it seems to be that like the hardware requirements are about the same as running a node on mainnet, or maybe a little bit less. You could probably run them together if you had a 2 terabyte drive or something.
Yeah, it should be quite a lot less. I think we've got people running nodes on like 4 cores. Like you're only really doing stuff when you're on the committee, and so the execution requirements are much less than Ethereum. You don't have to re-execute every transaction because it's a ZK kind of roll-up. You only have to kind of execute when you're producing blocks, and because of how the execution environment actually works, private transactions, all the execution is done by the user and it's proved. So it's actually, there's a lot less execution to do than kind of the EVM. Storage, we're very small at the moment, partly because we're on testnet. Like I think, over time we may end up taking gigabytes or terabytes, but I think right now it's under a gigabyte, the whole state tree, just on testnet. So yeah, you could definitely run this alongside an Ethereum node. The biggest bottleneck is bandwidth, but we're doing kind of lots to reduce that at the moment as well. So I think at the moment we're kind of recommending 25 megabytes up and down, but that's fairly conservative, and we can reduce the proof sizes if needed to kind of make better use of that bandwidth. The good thing about kind of running an Ethereum node alongside an Aztec node is you don't have to pay for kind of RPC connections, and you also have an up-to-date, very trusted source of L1 data. Whereas, if you have to outsource that, you can end up spending quite a lot of money to a third-party RPC, and usually they'll give you bad data. So the best data to trust is the one where you've been running it yourself. And so, yeah, you need a kind of a beacon chain kind of RPC endpoint, which is great.
Yeah, I'd say that's how I would run it as well, just to be self-sovereign, not relying on another third party as well.
Nice. So Cody, if you've been in our Discord, you might have saw our decentralization lead, Amin, but he's been running a node on very sketchy hotel Wi-Fi. So the requirements clearly aren't too tough.
Nice. Yeah, and I mean, over time, I think, as like bandwidth increases worldwide and hardware requirement, like as a consumer grade PC kind of like specs up over time, I don't think we'll need to reduce a bandwidth requirement for anybody, but it is nice to be able to give everybody that option, even if they aren't in a spot that has fiber or gigabyte internet or something like that.
So there's a bunch of operators using Starlink as well in the testnet. Shout out to the one dude in Nigeria who's using a solar powered generator with a Starlink. Yeah. It's probably the kind of most spicy node that's running.
Nice. I got it working on the Starlink as well, which is kind of cool. I also upgraded my internet in London. It's getting pretty cheap now. Like if you have fiber, like I just got like 500 megabytes up and down, and it's like £20 a month, which is like, I thought it was going to be like way more than that. So I've got way more capacity than I need now.
Yeah.
Ready.
So now we'll
on DPS.
So maybe now we'll flag Starlink as a centralization factor.
Yeah, I mean, the EU is building its own one right now, so maybe, yeah.
Bearish on that.
Cool. Well, I actually kind of do want to hand it over to Oshin in a second about maybe what we're building and how running an Aztec node alongside a layer 1 node using something like the Obel stack could be really cool. But before I jump there, what have you guys? What's the feedback you've received so far from testnet operators? Like, have they had any technical challenges or any issues that they've been facing, just to kind of let the community know what to expect?
Yeah, I can give an overview. So we launched about kind of 4 or 5 weeks ago. We had a lot of kind of demand of, I guess, lower quality node operators, but still people who are trying. And so I think it's quite easy to get set up because we got about 15 to 18,000 nodes running. Not all of them were in the validator set. Like we've got about like 750, 800 like actually in the validator set. there's obviously a problem on testnet that there's not an accurate Sybil mechanism. And so if you have a low quality validator kind of in the set and, they're offline, then that committee can't come to consensus on should a block be produced and the network halts. So most of the issues we've faced have been, around kind of making sure that, the quality of the validators are high enough in the committee. We'll be introducing kind of some like proof of humanity Sybil checks kind of either this week or next week to hopefully get more people in the set and make sure that the standard remains high. Plus also introducing lots of slashing and kind of test kind of like penalties, which I think should keep the rate of block production high. I think the biggest thing has just been people being offline and not being kind of like a high quality validator. And so that's one thing. There have been some kind of like quirks with like the peer-to-peer network, like building a new kind of like network. There's always some teething issues. We had a lot of kind of transaction echoes going around the network where we were running at like 0.5 TPS, so like really low TPS, but the actual like peer-to-peer traffic was like close to 15 just from like echoes. And so making sure that we know the right settings to configure the network with has been a bit of a learning process, but things are pretty stable right now. And we've got a few block explorers. I'll post some in the chat so people can have a look at kind of the current status of the network and go from there.
Yeah, and shout out the dashboard as well, Dashtech. So DASHTEC.xyz. That's a really good one just to check if you actually are in the set or if you want to check out your performance.
Nice, cool. Yeah, I actually hadn't thought about that. I've only been thinking about it from like an operator perspective, but I guess there are people, submitting transactions, and is there a lot of like development happening on the current testnet, like smart contracts deployed and people interacting with it?
Yeah, it's been good to see actually. So we've got like a dashboard. If you go to play.aztec.network, which is kind of, you can just play with a few different private smart contracts and kind of get a feel for how, in browser proof generation works. So we've got like a basic account contract, like a private voting, like election contract, and a private token contract on there. Those kind of like all going to work in the browser. You can also upload your own contracts there. So those are kind of like the, if you're a developer, just want to get started. We've also got a whole ecosystem though of people building, more advanced apps. There's kind of 2 wallets being built, a few trading apps, some NFT apps. Things that kind of like the intersection that we care about is the sort of stuff that privacy enables, where you can't do it on any other chain. And so, we're seeing kind of like identity-based trading or things that require like a whitelist to be able to trade with a proof of passport. Those are kind of good examples, as well as kind of just like OTC dark pools, those sorts of like apps where privacy is like the missing ingredient. So still has some public information about it, but there's kind of like extra secret sauce coming from privacy, which is really exciting to see. We've got an ecosystem page on the website as well, which lists kind of all the people deployed.
Cool. Yeah, I'll make sure to gather all these links and share them with everybody after the call. Yeah, I guess when people think about privacy, it has like a bad connotation to it, but in reality, I think you can prove, that you are KYC'd and in a certain country. You could prove anything you want, right? You could be like, given access to a pool that's specifically KYC'd, which is actually a good thing. So I think, just because something's private doesn't mean that it's bad, right? I think like privacy is actually good. So
yeah, it's the verifiability, but like that's something that ZK enables, right? It's just no one else uses ZK for privacy at the same time. And that goes back to like the commercial piece as well, like institutions like Ethereum, because it's credibly neutral. And so like if you can combine that with privacy preserving verifiability, we think it's pretty exciting.
Nice. Well, yeah, maybe I'd like to jump and hand it over to Oshin to talk about what we discussed earlier, which is like running something in a self-sovereign way, being able to deploy an Aztec node alongside your layer 1 node without having to rely on like a third party. And that's really what Oshin's been building on lately, which is called the Obel stack, and I'll let him discuss it a bit.
Yeah, So I think the use case is fairly straightforward, which is this idea of there's a lot of Ethereum related apps and layer twos and infrastructure and projects like it that all need full nodes. But right now it's quite a high barrier to entry to start adding on marginal ones. Like I have some horrific piece of spaghetti Docker Compose that I've been like hacking away at for 5 years and that I like feel bad about every time I look at it. And the idea of like, oh, I want to like run an Aztec, let's pretend mainnet node. It's like, cool, I can go and crack open the CLI reference and figure out what I'm going to need to like add as flags to get it to run. Maybe there's like some guides for it. But in general, there's kind of the two sides of there's the operator difficulties and then there's the kind of developer or platforms difficulties. From the operator side, if you could give them a one-liner to install, they'd be much more likely to add more things to their stack. They'd be like, sweet, Aztec full node, cool. I'll figure out a step from there to a validator. Maybe I'll throw on some Oracle or some, local Gnosis Safe UI that's, fully, private to myself. Being able to like lower the difficulty there to add more things to your stack, add kind of value to running a full node, and it doesn't have to be quite so much of a labor of love or an ideological thing that you can actually say, oh sweet, I can do 2 3 4 things and all of a sudden this thing is viable and worth my time and like makes me a bit of money. And then on the developer side, there's a similar difficulty of kind of distribution. It's much easier to be centralized, run the sequencer yourself, keep it online, manage it and take control. As you've probably realized over the last while in testnet, like rolling stuff out, getting people to upgrade, any small little change of a default or a flag is a bit of a nightmare. So, having kind of control over that is quite hard. And oftentimes everybody's system is set up differently. They use different toolings and stuff. So our choice when it comes to the stack was to build it on Kubernetes, which is something that, for those aren't familiar, allows you to build, enterprise software, but it's very well used and it has a lot of things like, automation for jobs and, cron jobs, storage. It can allow you to hook up your kind of GPUs, TEEs these days. And generally we use this thing called Helm to package stuff. And that allows the developer to say, cool, I'm going to put the 20 different things in Kubernetes that I need all into one, call it a file or a chart. And then we tell people, hey, install this like one line command and bam, you have an Aztec full node running. And that's kind of the two-sided marketplace that we're trying to kind of pull together and make it really nice for developers to be able to distribute software, to be like decentralized, and then to make it easy for node operators to add more stuff to the stack. And hopefully if this works out, we have a lot more people running nodes themselves. They have their own local explorer, their own UIs, wallet, RPCs, L2s, and that we generally achieve the kind of decentralization ethos that we maybe have lost over the last chunk of years. And some of us are still kind of keen to kind of bring that back.
Yeah, for sure. I can relate with your Docker Compose setup. I think mine's even worse. I have like Docker Compose, systemd services, and like, at the end of the day, sometimes I'm like afraid to mess with it if it's working properly. So it's like, oh, I don't want to spin up something new because what if I change a flag and they can't figure it out? So yeah, from an operator perspective, I think that totally makes sense. And it sounds like Helm just makes it easier to interoperate with other things that are on your machine.
It's a way to package up like all of the things you need in Kubernetes. So if your thing, you need like a container, you need some disk, you need some networking, you need a cron job, you put all of those into kind of a folder on GitHub and you maybe write what's called a chart that kind of tells someone how to install it all as one.
Yeah, we use it pretty extensively for the testnet. Like before we deploy something out to testnet, we have like a load of Helm charts that spin up like a nightly mini network of like, we just test that the committee works, and like you can go as extensive as like creating a mini network of like 48 nodes and kind of like testing things out. So I think, yeah, the software, especially with Kubernetes and Helm, it's a bit of a learning curve, but once you're up to speed, I think it's really robust. I know that the team's kind of been using it quite extensively.
Yeah, you were very encouraging when I was doing a bit of market research and talking to the L2 teams and trying to figure out, like, would you guys use Kubernetes or Helm? You and some of the other teams said, oh yeah, we have internal Helm charts we use all the time. We just never made them public because we never knew that there'd be demand for them. And I was like, sweet. let's make them public, maybe clean them up, make them a bit more simple for a node operator, and hopefully let people install them.
Awesome.
Give people an L1 RPC out of the box, so you don't have to worry about that piece.
Maybe you'll get me running a node even before too long if you make it easy enough, Oshin.
Yeah, here's hoping.
Nice. So, Oshin, maybe one more to you. What are you excited about regarding the Opal stack over the next like 6 to 12 months? Do you see, obviously maybe Aztec might be our first layer 2 Helm chart we can add in there, but anything else exciting on the roadmap?
Yeah, I think for the most part, my focus is on the developers side right now. I think we've done 4+ years of like helping node operators run infrastructure, and I'm fairly confident they exist, they're real, they will run nodes if the incentives make sense for them. So what I'm super keen to make sure and validate is that there are developers there that want to have their software run on thousands of nodes around the world in a decentralized fashion. And I think with Aztec, it's a fairly safe bet. But generally speaking, as we talk about other layer 2s, or I spend a lot of time looking at the kind of AVSs and networks like it, even the privacy local first people that want to kind of run all of their own infra, just making sure that there is a lot of people that want to do that, and that they're happy to make a bit of effort for it. In a perfect world, it should be very low lift, that they already maybe have their own Helm charts, and it's like, cool, yeah, just throw in a few custom values here and you're good to go. But that's what I think I enjoy at the moment. It's just talking to these developers and talking to them about like it is possible to distribute your software to a lot of people with 2 lines, like 2 commands to run, and just seeing if that's compelling, see what isn't, like whatever they want, seeing how AI and like MCP servers can help simplify the process. But that's, I think, where I spend a lot of my thinking time these days.
Nice. Yeah, I like when you mentioned like running a local version of a block explorer, or of, I don't know, I think about like maybe the Say or the Bybit hack recently, where the safe UI was compromised in some way, and being able to run something like that locally would, I guess, mitigate that problem. So, yeah, more self-sovereignty, I guess.
Sure.
All right, maybe to jump back to the node operators again. So we have a community of node operators that some of them hold the Techni credential, which if you hold a silver Techni credential, it means you've been operating on mainnet and have good performance. I'd say these are probably like the highest quality node operators that we have, and I know a lot of them are keen to get involved by spinning up an Aztec node. For Joe or Steve, what are like the next steps they could take to kind of get involved and maybe, I don't know, potentially jump the queue? I know your validator queue is like pretty long at the moment, or maybe there are only like a handful let in per day. Yeah, what would the next steps be?
Yeah, so we've got some great guides on our website. Kind of, we have a kind of like CLI command that does a lot for you. You can just kind of start a validator with kind of 1 or 2 commands. If you want to kind of peel back the hood, there's Docker Compose and Helm charts under the hood. If you want to go and kind of get your hands dirty, but there is a kind of like Aztec CLI where you can just run a validator, and there's a guide on our docs. I'll share the link in a second. And yeah, like in terms of kind of the validator set, it is permissionless, but yeah, as I was kind of mentioning earlier, Sybil mechanisms on a testnet are kind of hard, and so we have 5 slots a day currently that are permissionless. And for those who've kind of been validating or have got some credentials or NFTs to prove they're high quality validator, you just get in our Discord. I think Steve can share a link as well for a form that people can just kind of like register on, and we'll get you straight into the validator set. Amin's kind of in our Discord, making sure that the quality validators get in the right channels, and we'll give you the right roles to kind of help out and help us launch this decentralized network. So yeah, you can kind of skip the queue if you can prove you've been part of Opal and validating on mainnet, or just have some experience here. Yeah, at the moment I think we're at 60% kind of block production rate, and so maybe in a week's time, if we get some of you guys in, we'll be back up to kind of 90-95%, and that those committees will be doing their jobs properly. We'll also start the slashing rollout next week, so it's a good time to get involved to test out some kind of new network features. And we'll have like a set of challenges coming up to kind of like really track validator performance.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds cool. That maybe leads me into another question of like, how long do you expect the testnet to be live, and then kind of when do you expect to start making steps toward mainnet?
Yeah, so at the moment, so the testnet's kind of fully decentralized, apart from kind of two things. One is kind of like fully permissionless entry into the set, and two is kind of like exit from the set and slashing. And so the next testnet, we'll do an upgrade in the next couple of weeks, where we'll roll out kind of like the final feature set. And then there's a few different kind of like penalizable behavior that you can do as a validator. And so we probably have about 3 to 4 weeks of kind of tests to do to, make sure that all of those slashing kind of incentives work as intended. So that's kind of like from the technical side, what's left to validate. That could end up taking longer. So let's say conservatively kind of like 8 weeks of time before we feel confident that the software, is resilient and, it works as intended. Then there's some external audits, and then we've got to kind of like bootstrap the staking set on mainnet. The plan we have is to launch mainnet in phases. So there's kind of like an ignition phase where we just deploy the governance system and the block production system, but you can't actually use Aztec as an L2 at that point. It's kind of an empty blocks L2 just to really test that this like stage 2 rollup is working correctly. And then we'll add in the execution environment towards the end of the year. So yeah, it's going to be exciting, kind of like 6 months or so. But yeah, I think the earliest we can kind of have stuff, steps towards mainnet is probably, Q3 sort of time. So like mid Q3, I'd say.
Yeah, that sounds strikingly similar to the Beacon Chain launch, right? Where you could like bootstrap the validator set, but no transactions were happening, or it wasn't, I guess, integrated into the execution environment yet. So,
hey, if someone's done something well before you, just do the same as them. If it worked, like you don't have to invent it. Like, yeah.
Yeah, it worked for Ethereum, so can replicate it.
10-year anniversary this year as well. So
yeah,
got to follow in the steps.
Sweet. Well, that's that sounds really exciting. And if you're a Techni holder, go ahead and follow some of those links I dropped in the Discord chat, and get running on testnet. So yeah, we can start to maybe wrap it up a little bit. I do have a few questions, just general questions. Maybe one for Yoshin is like, how do you see maybe like ZK powered tech enabling any new use cases around DBT or the OBL stack? I know that like a lot of advancements have been made in ZK to, for verifiability. So
yeah, so there's probably lots of ways that ZK can be included, both in the validity type of ZK and then like ZK or like private ZK. I think one of the things that we spent a lot of time with is anti-Sybil measures and kind of untrusted distributed validator clusters. So in the very early days when we were trying to get this off of the ground, we're going to make this perfect protocol. It's going to, reward and punish people when they're online and offline, and it'll be very decentralized. And then we were struggling with ways that people could kind of game the system and could undermine it and could cheat and could Sybil and whatever. And then we were like, maybe we just make the version where you run with people you trust, and then let's try and make this perfectly balanced economic system kind of later. And that simplified DVs a lot, and in general works for the vast majority of people's cases because they're running distributed validators with people they know, and if they go offline, they can go chase them down. Whereas if it's a public key that you've never come across before, what do you do if it goes offline? But in that, though, we've still done quite a lot of research with the Nethermind team on trying to build something kind of more perfect and kind of provable. And we did a lot of like validity proof type of stuff in that regard. And then also, I still imagine the privacy side could be very useful for if you wanted to make these things a bit more private as well, or and like beyond pseudonymous. Beyond that, on the like stack side, I think there's a lot of use cases for it for proving kind of correct computation, things like it. I'm very fascinated by some of the work that like Celestia was doing recently, where they could prove that they were encoding DA correctly and come up with ZK proofs for it. So I would not be shocked to see a lot of stuff in that regard. And I don't know, I've seen a lot of people play with Noir, and I'm looking for an excuse to kind of hack on it at some point, but I haven't exactly figured out what I'm going to use for it yet.
I mean, one idea is just kind of, I think this has come up before, but giving kind of like home validators or solo stakers kind of a bit of a voice. Like if you already have a community where they have an NFT or they have some unique identifier. Someone from the team built this thing called Stealth Note, which is kind of like, it uses Noir to kind of have like a bulletin board, but it's based on like email domains. So you prove you're part of like an email domain, and then you can like, message on the board. Be kind of cool to see like that extended to kind of, different tribes of like solo validators, and like, you could get, finger on the pulse of like what does Obel really think as like a group of validators? What does Lido really think? And kind of like, you can kind of like see the different like different kind of ways of doing things. And maybe it's useful for Ethereum's governance as well, because you can actually get like some sort of like voting done ahead of kind of hard forks in a non-binding way with privacy as well. So I think there's some cool things that Noir can enable just based on what's on the chain already.
That'd be super fun. You could get like probably more honest feedback if you have proofs being like, yep, I'm in this validator set or this subset of the validator set, and this is what I'm talking about, but I'm not going to out myself entirely. Yeah, I'm often very reluctant to try and like kind of admit to being a solo staker. I think I didn't admit to it for years until, further along with Obel, you kind of, had to. But it's something that not everyone is super comfortable with admitting. So I could totally imagine that this would be a very kind of compelling little product to play with.
Yeah, someone just needs to build it now. Noir's ready. He just needs some people with the right ideas, I think, in a room.
I think we just need the list of withdrawal addresses, and I'm sure you figured it out for like ETH addresses already, if not trivially. So I don't think it'd be a whole lot of work.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there's a new project somebody can start building on.
Maybe Staking Master.
Yep, exactly. Maybe one for you, Joe, which I'm interested in is I've been following like the base to native rollup conversations that have been happening. I know Justin Drake's making like a big push to get these things spec'd out, and maybe even put like a proposal out there about using an execute precompile for like execution of a native rollup. Have you guys built the layer 2 with like that in mind at all, or made it like in some way easy to be forward compatible, or not at all yet?
Yeah, so I was pretty involved in some of the base rollup discussions. Like technically we nearly became a base rollup, but the amount of data that we'd need to broadcast with kind of every transaction just kind of really stopped us. Like I think I did the sums like back in the day when there was like 6 blobs available. And like if we used all the blobs, I think we could run at like 0.1 TPS, like be a base rollup just based on like all of the data that was available. So it just didn't really work. And I don't think the rest of the Ethereum ecosystem would have been very happy. So that's kind of where our committee and our validator set comes from. The kind of execute pre-command for native rollups, I think it's interesting. It's very useful for the verifiable compute side of things, and maybe it drives down the cost of something like Aztec, just because like there's less demand for kind of like non-privacy rollups. But the state model and like the execution environment of Aztec is so fundamentally different from Ethereum. It's secured and powered by Ethereum because we're like an actual rollup, but it's not really possible to shoehorn in like privacy, like different like data models, like UTXO model into that execute command. It's really only useful for kind of ZK EVM like structures or public structures. Maybe we could get like the final rollup part of it to fit inside there, but the plans change quite quickly, so we'll wait to see like where it lands. At the moment, we're just focused on supporting any kind of like proposals that get more blobs onto kind of the L1, because that's really beneficial for us.
Yeah, what are the 3 commandments right now? Scale the L1, scale blobs, and improve UX.
Yeah, I think that the blobs one will be amazing, and I think the UX side. Hopefully, we've solved a lot of that on Aztec. We've got a account abstraction, view abstraction, and yeah, could do some pretty cool stuff.
Nice. Yeah, and Cody, on the native side, like Aztec's non-EVM, right? So like privacy really only possible out with the EVM. So like we think we're adding something well warranting of adoption on the Ethereum side of things. So like arguably, if you extend further enough in the future, Aztec might be the only L2 in Ethereum.
Works.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess like you guys are building something that I'd say is uniquely different than every other L2. So I think that's what stands out to me. All right, we can get close to wrapping up. Is there anything that I didn't cover that you guys want to give a shout out before we wrap up?
I saw one in the chat, which was will OBOL's distributed validator technology play a role in validator decentralization? And I don't want to kind of overpromise and underdeliver, but as Joe was talking about this kind of struggle of some of these underperforming nodes or nodes that can't quite kind of cut it perfectly. This is something that we think about a lot when it comes to trying to bring more nodes into staking and things like it. Is ultimately distributed validator technology is, I don't know, I call it a multi-sig, but it's a way for a group of people to like sign with the threshold. So maybe at some point further down the line, people can run a validator together, because roughly speaking, they're attesting to a block and like pushing it to mainnet, but they're not doing anything like massively fundamental in terms of performance or something. So there might be a world where you can squad validate on Aztec at some point.
That'd be awesome. That would be like the Helm charts have really come into their own at that point. Like if you can do kind of squad validating. At the moment we have a similar kind of staking model to Ethereum where we have fixed staking amounts, so it would solve that problem nicely. So yeah, maybe it's something down the road.
Nice. Yeah, totally on board for that. Squad staking on Aztec. What about you, Joe or Steve? Anything else you guys want to shout out really quick?
Maybe just that we'll be in Berlin next week for Berlin Blockchain Week. So we've got No Archon 2 going on, and I'll be on the ground all week. If anyone happens to be around, we'd love to meet up in person. So fire me a DM on Discord.
Yeah, likewise. There'll be a good group of us in Berlin. Like if you need some help setting up a node, there's a few of us there. You got some questions, come find us. And yeah, I think the more kind of like high quality validators we can get, the better. And yeah, really happy to have the opportunity to talk to everyone here. And yeah, thanks for hosting us. It's been amazing.
Yeah, and I might get in trouble for saying this as well, but there might be a fireside chat with Vitalik and our other co-founder, Zach. So watch out for that one if you're in Berlin.
Let's go. Nice. All right, guys. Yeah, really enjoyed the chat, and thanks for sharing everything. And yeah, I'll definitely join your Discord and get my testnet node set up, and hopefully skip the queue as well.
You're welcome. Awesome. Thanks for having us. Speak soon.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Cheers, everyone.
See you later.